Hey everybody, it's Justin, your average running PT, and I want to tell you guys how to run slow to race fast and talk about the 80-20 principle of running. So you'll notice that I ran in the rain today. Quick question, do you guys run to the rain or do you try to avoid the rain? Typically I try to avoid it, but when you get caught out in it, well, basically you just end up running through it. So that's what I ended up doing today. So let me know down in the comments below, do you guys like running in the rain or do you generally try and stay away from the rain at all costs? So here's what I want to talk about today. Let's talk about the 80-20 principle of running and what does that even mean? So let's start with, as you're setting up your training programming, you should really be thinking about what is the balance of intensity versus volume, and thinking about how do I balance building a large aerobic base with keeping my speed intact and making sure that whenever I go to actually run a race, that those come together and peak at just the right time so that I can have my best time possible on that day. So the basic idea is this. Typically you want to be trying to hit somewhere around 80% of your volume at very low conversational type of paces. And the reason for that is, one, it helps reduce your overall injury risk because you're not pounding so hard on the pavement. Also, it helps build your aerobic capacity. What are some of the things that you're actually doing whenever you're building this aerobic capacity? Well, you're building the efficiency of the heart to pump more blood with every single beat. You're also building more capillary beds within the muscles of your body, making your muscles more efficient at using the blood as it's pumping through your system. You're also building more mitochondria, which are basically the powerhouse of the cells, powerhouse of your muscle cells. They convert oxygen into energy. So all of these things are working together whenever you're running at these lower heart rate zones, such as when you're doing Maffetone style training, which is what I tend to do myself. I try and stay within a certain Maffetone range. So whenever you're doing this, you're building the efficiency of your heart, you're building capillary density, and you're building mitochondria density as well. Also, what's happening is the mitochondria actually start to migrate from the center of the cell to the edge of the cell, making it that much easier for the oxygen coming from the bloodstream to actually get to the mitochondria and convert more oxygen into energy. So you can probably see how all of these things are working together for the good of the aerobic system. Now, as I mentioned before, you're also going to be reducing the potential risk for injury because you're not going so hard and putting so much pounding on your muscles, tendons, bones, all of those things. So you're actually preserving your body throughout this lower intensity training as well. Now, I know what you're thinking though. How do I maintain speed if all I'm doing is running at really, really slow paces? And you have a legitimate question there. So there's been a lot of research shown that actually gives pretty good indication that we can reach a very, very high level of speed within just a short amount of time, somewhere between 3 and 6 weeks. But it can take significantly longer than that to build up an aerobic base. It can take months or even years to build up the largest aerobic base that you can possibly build. So when you think in terms of importance, you want to think of your aerobic base as significantly more important than the actual speed work. Because if you're going to try and tune up and prime yourself up for a specific race, you can start to do that with more speed specific stuff within a period of about 3 to 6 weeks prior to that race. But if you don't have the aerobic base to put that speed on top of, then you're not going to be able to sustain that speed for a very long time. So let's go back to school for a second, and I'm going to use the whiteboard here to kind of show you what I'm talking about whenever it comes to building a larger aerobic base in order to peak at a much higher level. Okay, so if you think about it, you build an aerobic base that is so big here. Say this is your aerobic base that you build. Okay? Then you build some other intensities on top of it, and then you build speed on top of that. And you're going to peak at a certain level, right? Now, think about if you built your aerobic base even bigger. So now instead of this size aerobic base, you've got a much bigger aerobic base. Okay, you're still kind of going up here at the same level. And then you start to build a little bit more intensity on top of that. And then you can build your speed on top of that. And you can see that you're actually going to be at a much higher level than if you just built a smaller aerobic base. This is why you might improve over time if you spend more time doing aerobic base work than if you spend more time doing just the speed work. So Justin, what's a good balance then, right? You want to know, how much of this aerobic conditioning should I be doing versus speed work, or lactate threshold, or whatever other kind of higher intensity or anaerobic training that you're doing. And basically what we've kind of figured out over the course of doing research throughout the years in the running world is that you want to spend about 80%, at least 80% of your running in very low heart rate zones and low intensity levels. And then you spend the other 20% doing more lactate threshold runs, up-tempo stuff, strict speed work, VO2 max, all of that kind of stuff. So 80% low intensity, 20% higher intensity. Now, if you're just getting started and you're brand new to running, or you've taken some time off like I did a few weeks ago, then you might even want to spend more doing the easier running. So as of right now, I'm spending probably about 98% of my time doing really slow, easy runs. The only faster paced stuff that I'm doing is maybe 1 or 2 hill repeats at the end of a run, which takes me 30 seconds out of a 30 to 35 minute run. Now also, if you're just starting out a brand new training block, say you did your peak race, you took a couple of weeks off, and now you're going to start a new training block for another race down the road. You might even start off at like 90% or something like that around there. Obviously, this is all kind of a feel thing. You just want to make sure that you're doing close to 80% or more at these lower heart rate zones or Maffetone style training or whatever kind of polarized training that you're doing it more so on the easy end than you are on the hard end. Now, for those of you who aren't very sure if this is actually something that can work, let me just give you a little bit of encouragement here. So we're going to take my own kind of results over a 3-month time period of doing about 90% of my training at low heart rate or Maffetone style training. Now this was back starting in 2019 and coming to the beginning of the year. So here was my result in October of 2019. I ran 2 5Ks, one at the beginning of October, one at the end of October. And for both of those runs, I was doing a little bit more up-tempo style training. I was probably at more like a 60-40 split of easy runs versus hard runs. And while that's not terrible, it's definitely not what we're talking about when we're just thinking like polarized training. You really want to make sure that you're doing about 80% on one end and 20% on the hard end. Okay? So I was doing probably about 60-40. I improved from October 1st to October 31st. I ran a 5K at the beginning and end of that month, and I improved by 7 seconds. And the times were 20:59 and 20:52. Needless to say, I was pretty upset with myself that I wasn't making more progress over the course of a month than I did. And of course, I'm thinking in my head, my goodness, am I really that bad out of shape? 5 years ago, I could run a 5K in under 19:30. And why am I so far off from where I was before? Then I started Maffetone training. So when I started doing Maffetone training and just strictly doing these low heart rate runs, and doing that at about 90% of my normal volume, and then I would throw in some speed work on top of that whenever I run with my running club. We always did our track workouts and stuff like that. But for the majority of my runs, I was doing 90% of those runs at low heart rate. When I did a time trial in March, the results were pretty incredible. So I did about 3 months of Maffetone style training and still did my 1 day a week of speed work. But the time dropped from 20:52 down to 19:38. And then the next week I did a mile time trial in 5:29. So I improved pretty significantly over the course of those 3 months, and that was primarily with low heart rate training and Maffetone style training. Now, of course, after I did those time trials, I took 6 or 7 weeks off completely, so now I'm kind of starting from zero, but that's okay because I know I did it once before. Now I just have to be patient and make sure that I let these adaptations come as they come, because that's the thing. It's really easy to try and force this to happen by trying to go a little too fast, and then suddenly your heart rate shoots up and then you got to walk again and come back down. You just have to trust the process, take it slow, take it easy, and you can inject a little bit of speed in there to keep your legs alive, but remember to keep it significantly more in the low heart rate zones, 80% at least, versus 20% or less in the higher heart rate zones. So again, right now I'm doing about 95% in the low heart rate zones, 5% just injecting some speed, some strides, some hill repeats, things like that at the end of those longer runs, just to keep my legs alive. But for the most part, it's really been super easy running over the last 2.5 weeks, and I plan on doing that for the next probably 4 weeks until I start to maybe bring those percentages a little bit closer together, from 95 and 5 to 90 and 10, 85 and 15, maybe to 80-20 after a period of maybe 8 weeks or so. Now, if you guys have any questions about this kind of training, this low heart rate zone training, then definitely shoot me a message or leave me a comment down below. I want to know what you guys think about this style of training. Have you tried it before? And do you think it would actually work for you? And believe me, it can be really frustrating. So check out this video here if you try this and you find that it's frustrating. I tell you about my frustrations on that video a little bit. So definitely check that out, and make sure that you subscribe if you haven't already, like this video, and I will see you guys next time.